7 seconds. That's all it took to redraw the rules of modern warfare, not from the sky, but from just 4 inches above the sea. At precisely 3:15 hours, a Ukrainian sea drone, designation Alpha 111, slipped into motion beneath the cover of darkness. It surged forward across the Black Sea at 39 knots, its matte gray hull nearly invisible against the dark, wind-churned waves. No lights betrayed its presence. No radar signature flickered into the night. Only the faint hum of its electric motors whispered beneath the crashing surf, indistinguishable from the sea's natural noise. It was a ghost in motion, one built to kill. Its destination, a 5x5 nautical grid labeled Blackbird 5, roughly 70 kilometers south of Odessa. Though legally unclaimed, both sides treated it like cursed water. Russian patrol aircraft crisscrossed it nightly, not lingering long enough to be noticed, until tonight. Inside a camouflaged command van parked near the coastal town of Ochakiv, 2 Ukrainian operators hunched over glowing control panels, each screen pouring greenish light onto their tired faces. The air inside was still, thick with tension and the aroma of reheated coffee. They monitored Alpha's progress through its onboard thermal and electro-optical sensors, silent, focused, waiting for a sign. And then it came. On the FLIR display, 2 heat blooms flared into view, brief, faint, but unmistakably airborne. One followed behind the other in a smooth arc, moving fast and low. The operators tensed as the system resolved the shapes. Twin Sukhoi Su-27s, executing a textbook drone hunting sweep. Moments later, one peeled off from the formation and banked sharply, headed straight toward Alpha 111. Inside the van, the lead operator leaned in, squinting. "He's going for visual," he muttered under his breath, fingertip twitching above a command icon on the screen. But Alpha didn't wait. Even before the command was issued, the onboard AI reacted. The drone dropped its speed to 18 knots, its hull sinking lower into the water, adopting the sea's rhythm like a drifting kelp bed. Its thermal signature blended into the surrounding waves, becoming one more cold ripple in an ocean full of them. Overhead, the Su-27 dipped in altitude, its pilot scanning the water for an unnatural shape or shimmer, something, anything. But the drone was no longer a target. It was a ghost. Then, silently, Alpha 111 revealed its fangs. A retractable mast rose from behind the communications array, extending just over a meter above the deck. At its tip sat the Mura V5 electro-optical targeting system, custom-built for operations like this. Housed within the waterproof frame were 3 sensors, a daylight camera, a long-wave infrared detector, and a laser rangefinder, all stabilized by gyros making 50 micro-adjustments per second to account for wave motion. It was a sniper scope mounted on a boat no larger than a jet ski, and tonight, it had one job. The jet passed overhead, exhaust glowing faintly against the starlight. Inside the drone, the targeting software acquired the silhouette, centered it, and fired off a brief, invisible pulse of laser light. On the screen in the command van, a number flashed in red, 1.68 kilometers. A perfect shot distance. The operators didn't speak. They didn't move. Somewhere out over the Black Sea, a 39-knot sea ghost was about to take the shot that would make military history. At 4:16 hours, the Su-27 loomed larger through the pre-dawn haze, its silhouette etched sharply against the fading stars. The jet had entered what pilots call a visual recon posture, slow enough to scan the water for anomalies, fast enough to bolt if something fired back. It held a steady arc, engines rumbling low as it lined up for a broadside sweep of Alpha 111's grid box. Inside the command van, the tension had thickened like concrete. The operators barely breathed, eyes locked on the tactical screen where the targeting reticle now hovered, centered and twitching with minute corrections as the drone's gyroscopic platform adjusted for swell and pitch. Then it locked. No chatter. No countdown. The lead operator toggled the command. A single word was all it took. Fire. The command transmitted instantly, and deep inside Alpha 111's composite hull, the firing relay snapped into action. A percussive thump erupted from midships, more felt than heard, shuddering through the drone as the launcher discharged. Flame ignited in a flash of raw orange, briefly illuminating the sea's surface in a cone of reflected fire. The missile, a modified Ukrainian variant of the Soviet-era 9K-38, known to NATO as the SA-18 Grouse, shot skyward on a tail of sparks. Its shriek was drowned by distance and surf. The drone, meanwhile, rocked violently from recoil, momentarily losing speed as it absorbed the shock. Up above, inside the flanker's cockpit, All hell broke loose. Alarms blared in the pilot's headset, the wailing tone of a missile lock. He slapped at the countermeasures panel instinctively, flinging magnesium flares behind him in twin bursts. White fire lit up the sky as he slammed the throttles forward and tried to pull into a hard bank. But it was too late. The missile had already acquired his heat signature, zeroed in on the twin engines glowing like beacon fires beneath the fuselage. At 4:17 and 11 seconds, 68 kilometers south of Odessa, the missile's proximity fuse tripped. The warhead detonated midair, sending a blossom of metal shards ripping through the fighter's starboard engine. Flames burst from the rear fuselage as fuel lines split open and the right wing sheared slightly off-axis. The jet pitched violently, smoke trailing in long ribbons. Inside, the pilot yanked the ejection handle. A fraction of a second later, his seat launched skyward, the canopy bursting away as he separated from the doomed aircraft. Behind him, the Su-27 nosed into a death spiral, engines howling one last time as it began its final dive toward the Black Sea. The van stayed silent. On screen, the thermal camera caught everything: the impact, the fireball, the breakup, and finally, a human-shaped heat signature drifting away from the carnage, followed by the gentle bloom of a parachute. Sweat rolled down the operators' necks, but no one celebrated. No one even smiled. They understood what was coming. One Su-27 down. Hundreds of millions in technology destroyed. And every Russian combat asset within range was now racing to that exact spot, ready to obliterate anything that might have pulled the trigger. The moment the Su-27's wreckage began to fall, Alpha 111's onboard systems kicked into overdrive. Within seconds of the missile's detonation, the drone's software initiated an emergency evasion protocol. Its electric motors surged, shoving the hull forward with everything left in the battery reserves. Alpha dipped lower, hull practically submerged, slicing across the surface like a skipping stone, its reinforced spine absorbing each impact as it pounded through the waves. Saltwater sprayed over the targeting mast, which remained elevated, streaming live telemetry, video, and encrypted data packets back to headquarters in Kiev. Every byte of information, radar logs, thermal confirmation, strike footage, was critical. Without it, the downed flanker would be just a rumor, another unverifiable hit in a sea of propaganda. The command van screens flickered with new threats. 2 new heat signatures lit up the tactical display, rotary wing contacts, closing from the southeast at high speed. K-52 Alligator gunships. Their unique rotor blade rhythm was unmistakable. Likely scrambled from a forward patrol base in occupied Crimea, they were already inside a 15-kilometer radius. And Alpha 111 had a problem. A big one. It had fired its only weapon. It was now defenseless. The operators exchanged glances. In this game, even a confirmed kill could be meaningless if you didn't survive long enough to prove it. Inside the van, the secondary operator's voice cut through the silence. Comm link degrading. Alligators jamming us. The Starlink uplink status bar blinked yellow, then red, then flickered to static before stabilizing. Electromagnetic interference, likely from onboard jammers, was clawing at the drone's signal. A few seconds of sustained dropout would be enough to sever the feed, losing the only evidence of the strike. The footage. The telemetry. The thermal kill shot. Without that, the entire operation would dissolve into deniability. The Russians would claim it never happened, and the world might believe them. The lead operator didn't hesitate. He punched in the emergency burst command. One chance to package everything the drone had seen, every frame, every sensor ping, into a compressed, high-priority data pulse. Alpha responded instantly, veering 30 degrees northeast to optimize satellite alignment. The primary antenna brightened subtly as it dumped all available power into the uplink, pushing the signal straight into the upper atmosphere, hoping it would punch through the haze of Russian jamming. If it worked, Kiev would get the proof. If it didn't, Alpha 111's final act would vanish without a trace. On the screen, the tactical map glowed red. The Ka-52s were closing fast. 90 seconds to contact. By 4:20 hours, the nightmare had arrived. Through the coastal haze, the Ka-52 Alligator broke visual, its angular fuselage emerging from the mist like a flying executioner. The gunship's rotors beat a savage rhythm as it leveled off, just a few hundred meters from the sea surface. Alpha 111, still skimming the waves at 42 knots, strained every circuit, its hull shuddering violently from the stress. Spray lashed the sensors, salt encrusting the targeting mast as the drone tore eastward, fighting to stay alive. But survival was no longer the mission. The data package had been sent. Kiev had what it needed. Now the drone just had to delay destruction long enough to avoid jamming-induced signal loss. Every second it stayed online mattered. Inside the command van, The operators were drenched in sweat, faces ghost pale. The feed began to flicker again. Static, then clarity, then distortion. The Alligator's electronic warfare suite was overpowering the Starlink relay. The lead operator issued a final directive: terrain echo evasion. Alpha 111 instantly complied, diving into troughs between waves, altering its yaw with a deliberate 6-degree offset, just enough to mimic the unpredictable angles of whitecap patterns. The drone's tactical AI kicked in, executing a chaotic zigzagging path that would confound most human gunners. But this wasn't a rifleman on the shore. This was a gunship, armed with optics, missiles, and a 30mm autocannon designed to shred armored vehicles, let alone a composite sea drone. At 4:21, the Alligator entered hover mode. It braked hard and tilted its nose down, lining up its first shot. A split second later, a burst of 30mm fire cracked across the horizon. Shells walked across the water in a tight pattern. Then impact. Rounds tore into Alpha's left stabilizer, shearing it off with brutal precision. A geyser of sea spray erupted 20 feet into the air as the drone lurched violently, nearly capsizing before correcting. Battery warning indicators flashed crimson across the monitors in the van. Internal temperatures spiked. The starboard cooling vent had been compromised, and the systems were overheating fast. The drone had less than 2 minutes of life left. Inside the Alligator, the gunner adjusted his position, realigning for a second burst. This time, the shell struck midships. The electro-optical targeting mast exploded in a shower of sparks and fractured composite, blinding the drone instantly. In the van, the main video feed went black. Static hissed across every display. No more thermal, no more visuals, just telemetry readings plummeting toward zero. But it didn't matter anymore. The mission was already complete. Seconds before the drone lost contact, the compressed data burst had hit its target, a secure uplink node outside Kyiv. Everything, the thermal kill shot, the laser rangefinder log, the engine signature, the detonation, had been received intact. The confirmation of a sea drone destroying a Russian fighter jet had been secured. History had already been written. But Alpha 111 wasn't done suffering. At 4:22, the Ka-52 descended again. One final volley tore into the drone's central spine. The hull fractured along its seams. With a sickening twist, Alpha flipped once, then vanished beneath the waves, swallowed by the very sea it had conquered. Silent. Gone. In the command van, no one spoke. The monitors faded to black. And somewhere, far above the chaos, a satellite beamed the last ghostly images of Alpha 111 to the world. Proof that the age of seaborne aerial killers had begun.